It's 1240 AD. You're 15. And tonight your father sells you, not for gold, not for glory, but to God. You were born in medieval England, into a family with a father who was more married to ale than to his duties. He loved his 5 daughters in his own strange way. But love didn't put food on the table or save dowry money. You were the second youngest, and by the time you reached 15, everyone in the village knew you were the most beautiful of them all. Your hair was the color of spun gold, your eyes the shade of a summer sky. Men would stop and stare as you walked through the market, their whispers following you like a shadow. A powerful general in the king's army even noticed you. He was a man of stern reputation, his face a map of old battles, but his eyes softened when they fell on you. He declared he wanted to marry you, a union that would have elevated your family's standing beyond imagination. But his family demanded a dowry so heavy it could sink a ship, a mountain of gold and land that your father simply did not possess. Your father, of course, had already wasted most of his wealth on barrels of ale and marrying off your older sisters with what little he had. The general's offer was a dream, but one built on a foundation of coin your family could never afford. One evening, while drowning his sorrows at the tavern, your father heard whispers. Rumors that the church was secretly paying for young women to become nuns. A small sum, a finder's fee of sorts, given to families willing to dedicate their daughters to the holy life. It was a transaction disguised as piety, a way for the convent to fill its ranks and for desperate men to line their pockets. A dangerous idea began to form in his alcohol-soaked mind. He saw a solution, not to your future, but to his own immediate thirst. That night, he came to your bedside. The smell of cheap ale was thick on his breath as he leaned over you, his shadow dancing in the faint moonlight. He kissed your forehead, a gesture so rare it sent a shiver of unease down your spine. "God will take care of you, love," he murmured, his voice thick with a strange mix of regret and relief. "And with this silver, I'll take care of myself," he added, his hand closing around a small pouch of coins you hadn't seen before. You didn't understand then, but the cold finality in his tone would haunt you for years to come. The next morning, before the sun had even touched the horizon, they came for you. 2 stern-faced men from the church, their black robes stark against the gray dawn. They dragged you from your bed, your father standing by, unable to meet your terrified gaze. They took you to the village square and shaved your head in front of everyone. Your long golden hair, the very thing strangers once praised and poets would have written sonnets about, dropped in silent, shimmering piles at your feet. They stripped you of your soft silk dress, the last remnant of your old life, and shoved you into a rough black woolen habit that smelled of mold and damp stone. You caught your reflection in a polished brass tray held by one of the men. A stranger stared back at you, a pale, shorn creature with wide, frightened eyes. Your beauty was gone, stolen in one cruel, humiliating hour. At the convent, you expected to find a life of quiet prayers, gentle hymns, and serene contemplation. A sanctuary. Instead, the supervising priest, a man with a face like carved granite, shoved a stiff, coarse brush into your hands. "Scrub the entire church floor by tonight," he commanded, his voice devoid of warmth. "God sees your effort. Don't disappoint him." You looked up at the vast nave, the endless stone slabs stretching into the shadowy distance. The floor seemed to go on forever. You worked until your hands were raw and your knees bled through the rough fabric of your habit. When you finally collapsed from exhaustion, the stone cold against your cheek, the priest simply looked down at you with disdain. "Do better next time," was all he said before walking away, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous silence. Sleep became a forgotten luxury. At 4 a.m, the jarring clang of the matins bell would rip you from a fitful doze. The days became a blur of endless prayers recited in a language you didn't understand, and a routine of fasting that left you perpetually weak and lightheaded. The hunger was a constant, gnawing pain in your belly, a physical manifestation of the emptiness that had taken root in your soul. You came here to serve God. Instead, you're learning what it really means to serve men. You thought hell was outside the convent walls. You were wrong. Hell wore robes and spoke Latin. Hunger became your constant companion, a dull ache that never left. Your days were a blur of grueling labor and empty prayers, each moment ruled by exhaustion. You scrubbed floors until your knuckles were raw, hauled buckets of water until your shoulders screamed, and prayed on your knees until the stone floor felt like a bed of nails. Food was scarce. A small bowl of thin gruel and a crust of stale bread meant to sustain you through hours of toil. The other nuns, gaunt and hollow-eyed, moved like ghosts, their spirits as starved as their bodies. During a 3-day fast, a ritual meant to purify the soul, the gnawing in your stomach became a monster. As you knelt in the chapel, the scent of a single perfect apple placed on the altar as an offering drove you mad. It was red and glossy, a jewel in the dim candlelight. Your eyes, against your will, darted towards it again and again. You imagined its crisp skin, the sweet burst of juice on your tongue. Just as you allowed yourself the sin of a longing glance, a sharp crack echoed through the silence. A senior nun's rod struck your shoulders with searing pain. "The sin is in the desire, child," she hissed, her voice like grinding stone. "Purify yourself. Pray for forgiveness." The apple remained untouched, a symbol of everything you could never have. The nights offered no escape. They were colder than tombs, a damp chill seeping from the stone walls and into your bones. You slept on the bare floor of a small cell, your thin wool habit the only barrier against the unforgiving stone. Sleep was a luxury rarely afforded. You'd lie awake, listening to the scuttling of rats in the darkness, their tiny claws a constant reminder of the decay that surrounded you. Sometimes you'd hear the soft whimpers of the younger novices, their dreams haunted by the families they were forced to leave behind. You are all prisoners here, trapped in a cage of piety and stone. One afternoon, while tending the convent's meager garden, you saw him. A small peasant boy, no older than 7, with ribs stark against his dirt-caked skin, was lingering by the outer wall. His eyes were wide with a hunger you knew intimately. He looked at the apple tree, its branches heavy with fruit just beyond his reach. An impulse, a flicker of the girl you used to be, took over. Looking around to ensure no one was watching, you quickly plucked 2 apples and, under the cover of a thick bush, pushed them through a crack in the wall. The boy's hands shot out, grabbing the fruit as if it were gold. He gave you a look of silent, desperate gratitude before scurrying away. For a moment, you felt a warmth spread through your chest, a feeling you hadn't known since before the convent walls closed around you. Your secret act of kindness was short-lived. The abbess, a woman whose face seemed permanently carved from ice, had seen everything. She grabbed your arm, her fingers digging into your flesh like talons. "What have you done?" She seethed, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. She dragged you back towards the chapel, her grip merciless. "You steal from God to feed vermin? Better that boy die of starvation than you bring dishonor upon this holy house." Her words were a slap, colder and sharper than any physical blow. Your punishment was swift and cruel. 10 days in solitary confinement with no food, only water. They locked you in a windowless cell in the deepest part of the convent, a place reserved for the gravest sinners. The darkness was absolute, the silence broken only by your own ragged breaths and the pounding of your heart. Days and nights blurred into one long, agonizing stretch of time. The hunger you thought you knew before was a pale shadow of this torment. It was a fire in your belly, a dizzying weakness that made the world spin. You prayed, not for forgiveness, but for the end. On the 8th day, the lock turned. Light flooded the cell, blinding you. A visiting high priest, a man of great importance, stood silhouetted in the doorway. He had heard of your crime. He looked at you, a crumpled heap on the floor, and then at the abbess. "Is this how we serve the Lord?" he asked, his voice booming with authority. "By letting his children starve? Service to the poor is service to God." The girl was acting on a divine impulse. He decreed that you were to be spared. The abbess, though seething, could not defy him. You were released, weak and trembling, but alive. You thought you had been saved by an angel. That night, you learned that even angels can be demons in disguise. As you made your way to your cell, a hand closed around your arm in the darkness. It was him, the high priest. He cornered you in a dark alcove, his breath hot and smelling of wine. "I saved you," he whispered, his voice no longer booming with righteousness, but slick with something sinister. "A life for a life, a favor for a favor. You owe me." His eyes roamed over you, stripping you bare. "You owe me your silence." And your body, the world tilted, the stone walls closing in. Your vow of chastity, the one sacred thing you had left, wasn't given to God. It was stolen in a dark, silent corner of his own house by a man who wore his cross. Weeks turned into a month, then 2. A sickness took root in you, a constant nausea and a weariness that clung to you like a shroud. Then the undeniable change began. Your belly, once flat from starvation, started to swell. The loose robes could only hide it for so long. Whispers followed you down the cloisters like snakes. The other nuns, once your sisters in suffering, now looked at you with a mixture of pity and disgust. The convent erupted. A fallen nun, a pregnant sinner, was the ultimate disgrace. They dragged you before the entire congregation, your secret laid bare for all to see. The priest, the very man who had violated you, was not there. He was gone, back to his high station, leaving you to face the fire alone. "Confess your sins." The abbess shrieked, her face contorted with righteous fury. The words stuck in your throat. How could you confess a sin that was not yours? But your silence was taken as guilt. They thrust a knotted rope into your hands. Purge the sin from your flesh. As the crowd of nuns watched, their faces cold and merciless, you were forced to strike your own back, the sharp sting of the rope a public penance for a private hell. Finally, the verdict was delivered. You were a whore, a stain on the purity of the convent, a vessel for the devil's work. There was no mercy. They ripped the black habit from your body, the rough cloth that had become your second skin. You stood before them, shamed and exposed, as they branded you with their judgment. Then they threw open the heavy gates. Banished, starving, and shamed, you stagger into the cold streets, a nun no more, but not yet free. They called you a sinner, but when the plague came, the sinners ran, and you stayed. Your father, the man who sold you to the church for a few silver coins, had already forgotten you. At the convent, your defiance against the endless labor and cruelty earned you the scorn of the nuns and the wrath of the priest. You were a problem, an unholy spirit in a holy place. "You're no daughter of mine," your father had declared. Now, the Mother Superior echoed the sentiment. "You are no sister of God," she hissed, her face twisted in pious rage. "Get out. You are a stain on this house." They threw you out of the convent gates with nothing but the tattered habit on your back, the same one they forced you into just a few months before. Freedom tasted like dust and despair. You walked the muddy roads, begging for scraps of bread. But even the lowest beggars, men with missing limbs and women with empty eyes, turned away from you. "A fallen nun," they'd whisper, spitting on the ground where you stood. "Bad luck. You tried to find shelter in the villages, but doors were slammed in your face. The sight of your shorn head and the remnant of your habit marked you as an outcast. Your nights were spent in the cold, damp corners of barns, huddled in the hay with the livestock, their animal warmth the only comfort you knew in a world that had utterly rejected you. The rats were better company than the people who once called you neighbor. Desperate and starving, you eventually found work in the very place your beauty might have once secured you a place of honor, a nobleman as estate. But you weren't there as a lady. You were there to clean what no one else would. Your new job was scrubbing the filth from their stone latrines, the stench clinging to your skin and hair, a constant, sickening perfume. The young nobles, the sons and daughters of the Lord, would sometimes come to watch you work. They'd lean against the stone walls, wine cups in hand, laughing at the fallen nun cleaning their waste. Their mockery was a sharp physical pain, a daily reminder of how far you had fallen. You were a ghost in their world, visible only when they needed a target for their cruel amusement. Then the whispers started. A sickness from the east, a pestilence that turned the skin black and stole the breath from your lungs. At first, it was a rumor, a story told by travelers. Then it became a reality. The Black Death swept across the land like a foul wind. Fever, swollen, bursting boils in the armpits and groin. A cough that brought up blood. It was a swift, merciless killer. The villages fell silent, the markets emptied. The only sound was the tolling of church bells, which soon stopped because there was no one left to ring them. Mass graves were dug, quickly filled, and then abandoned. The nobles you served were the first to flee. They packed their silks, their gold, and their finest horses, abandoning their castle and their servants in a panic. They rode for the countryside, convinced their wealth could outrun God's wrath. But the plague did not care for status or coin. It seeped through their castle walls and followed them down the manicured roads. The Lord, his lady, their mocking children, they all fell. One by one, the castle staff succumbed, their screams echoing in the empty halls before fading into silence. Soon, the only ones left were the outcasts, the forgotten ones like you, the ones with nowhere left to run. You walked through the silent, opulent rooms, a place where you were once invisible. Now you were the only one left. You found the sick, the dying, the ones who had laughed at you just weeks before. A young lady in waiting, her face pale with fever, reached out a trembling hand. You took it. You brought her water, wiped her brow, and held her as the final shudders took her. You went from room to room, a lone specter of mercy in a palace of death. You nursed the dying, offering a sip of water, a cool cloth, a quiet presence in their final, terrifying moments. You cleaned the bodies, closed their eyes, and whispered a prayer your heart remembered even if your mind had tried to forget. You, the sinner, were doing the work the saints had abandoned. But the plague is not a respecter of persons. One morning, you woke up with a fire in your veins. A deep, aching chill settled into your bones. You touched your neck and felt it. A hard, painful lump, the telltale bubo. The fever came on fast, a dizzying, disorienting wave. The world blurred. You stumbled through the empty castle, calling out, but only the wind answered. The coughing started, a deep, rattling choke that tore at your throat and brought the taste of blood to your lips. You collapsed on the cold stone floor of the great hall, alone. There was no one to bring you water, no one to hold your hand, no one to pray for you as you had prayed for them. Your last moments were a fevered dream of loneliness. You thought of your father's boozy smile, the general who wanted to marry you, the cold eyes of the mother superior. A lifetime of rejection played out in your final, gasping breaths. Your body was found days later by the plague collectors, men with masked faces and long hooks, their carts piled high with the dead. They didn't see a girl who was once beautiful, a woman who showed mercy to her tormentors. They just saw another corpse. They tossed your body onto the cart with the others, a tangle of limbs and hollow eyes. The cart rumbled to the cliffs overlooking the sea, the final destination for the unburied dead. Your body, along with countless others, was tipped over the edge, a final, unceremonious offering to the waves. Forgotten by your family, erased by the church, swallowed by history. No prayers, no grave, just waves and silence. So next time someone romanticizes the Middle Ages, remind them, nothing sucked harder than being a medieval nun.